A very interesting story breaking in by the way of an RBI report that talks about the asset quality with the banks, which says it's at a decadal high, essentially, conveying the fact that NPAs are declining, frauds are also declining, and the balance sheet of banks is improving.
Yes. I'll break this into two parts. On the one side, asset quality of Indian banks is on a 10-year high, but profitability is likely to moderate. Why is that going to happen? Because the difference between the lending rates and the deposit rates is going to lessen. Even as we say this, SBI has hiked its interest rates on short-term deposits. So now deposits between 1 week and 45 days will fetch 3.5% as against 3%. Why this is important? Other banks are likely to follow. Why this is important? When the difference between the lending rates and the deposit rates is lessening, profitability is likely to go down. Because the earnings is mostly from lending, outflow of revenues is from deposits, deposit rates. Bank NPAs in September fell to 3.2% from 3.9% in March. So even during this year, they have been consistently going down, the non-performing assets of bank. Higher capital adequacy, robust profitability will further improve the banking systems. Now 45% of the improvement in NPAs has come from recoveries and upgradations. So either the borrowers are becoming more prudent and prudent in giving back what they owe to the banks, or the banks are getting more aggressive
and efficient
and more organized in collecting. So that is one part. And the consolidated balance sheets, which give the total complete picture of a bank's health, has increased by 12.2% in the year 2022-23. Public sector banks accounted for 64% of the total deposits and 57.9% of the total advances. So public sector banks are the ones who are leading the whole change.
Okay.
Now I come to the other part of what is happening in banks and why they're getting stronger. And that is the total amount of frauds reported by banks has gone down to a 6-year low. The average amount of frauds has gone down to a 10-year low. So even on that side, the health of banks is going up multifold. There is a contrast in this. While the total amount has gone down, the number of frauds reported by banks has almost doubled, has gone up from 7,263 cases 2 years ago in 2020-21 to 13,576 in 2022-23. So that has doubled. So total number of cases, so obviously the frauds are happening in lower amounts. So amount has gone down, but the number of frauds has increased. The maximum number of frauds that are happening in banks are happening in internet-related transactions, which has been the most common type of fraud. It is little wonder then that the government has asked banks to brace themselves for the oncoming challenge, especially banks and fintech companies, for the oncoming challenge of deep fakes. So this challenge for banks is only going to go up. I'll just give a little number on how much this has affected. 12,069 instances of credit and internet-related frauds were reported by banks in H1 FY24, the first half of financial year 24. This number was close to 2 times the number of frauds reported in the entire year of 2022-23.
Right.
And if you see the first half of FY23, it was only 2,321. So 2,321 and 12,000, that is the jump in the number of internet-related frauds that the banks are experiencing.
Absolutely. Just to sum that up, RBI's Trend and Progress of Banking report has highlighted how the gross NPAs have been declining, in fact, year on year over the course of last 10 years. Numbers are staggering here. The NPAs continue to decline, accounted for about 45% reduction in the past couple of years since 2018-19 when the accounting actually started. So the RBI's trend report talks about how both banking system, non-banking financial companies have remained resilient. They have been supported by high capital ratio, improved asset quality and strong earnings. In fact, when you talk about GNPAs or gross non-performing asset ratio, agriculture sector had the highest, retail loans were the lowest. This number, both in agriculture and retail, now on a decline year after the year. So the GNPA ratio for scheduled commercial banks in fact dropped to 3.9% at the end of March of 2023, further decreased to 3.2% at the end of September of 2023. It appears that all the risk management practices that banks have taken to is finally paying off, and not just paying off by the way of the NPAs which are declining, but also by the amount of frauds. Now I talk about amount because it's important to understand, while the total amount of frauds have gone down, the number of frauds that have been reported have in fact doubled, as my colleague pointed out, from about 7,263 in the year of 22-21 to 13,576 in 22-23. So the amount therefore involving in these frauds overall have seen a significant decline, for that matter, from 1,18,000 or 1,18,000 to 26,000 crores. That is in the same period. So that is a staggering number. But frauds still continue to happen. I think the question that one needs to ask at this point, Amit, is that although I'm looking at a significant decline from 1,18,000 to 26,000, there is a decline in the amount of frauds, but the total number of frauds, even though they are small ticket, they are fast increasing.
Yeah. So obviously, because they are internet related frauds that are increasing, the small ticket fraudsters who basically, to give an example, are the ones we receive calls from for little amounts and all that, that has gone up. So the total, and these fraudsters obviously can fraud only up to a certain amount. So they can't make big dent in the bank, the amount of fraud that they can siphon off from the banks. So that is why the number has gone up. Probably there are more people who are internet savvy and who want to engage in these sorts of activities. But large amount, big ticket frauds that happened maybe once upon a time are not happening as much. They are on a big decline, 85% decline in the amount of frauds in this financial year.
Absolutely. I mean, come to think of it, the number from 1,18,000 to 26,000, about 80% decline in the amount of frauds. But also let's remember, not every person who is defrauded goes on to report that fraud. I in fact, personally, I think all of us know of a number of people who are defrauded when they get those petty calls about, transferring a certain amount, when they're defrauded through internet banking or through other, very lucrative ways in which scamsters have come out to dupe people of money. Not every time do we end up reporting. If it's a couple of thousand, we don't even end up reporting at all. Yeah,
that's because what most people do after this happens to them is they change their user ID and their passwords immediately.
Right.
But they don't always report it if the amount is not too big.
Absolutely. So the numbers, while they're looking very good when it comes to amount of frauds, the number of frauds in fact increasing substantially there year on year. Numbers not looking good when it comes to frauds, but it is still at the moment 6-year low when it comes to amount. There's been an 80% decline in amount of bank-related frauds. This as per the RBI Trends report. Interesting highlights there coming in as far as banking and non-banking sector is concerned.